friends, let us gather in a quiet space of contemplation, for what we are about to speak of cannot be captured merely by the intellect. It is a matter of the soul, of the unseen threads that bind the inner life to the outer world, of the unconscious patterns that repeat themselves in the lives of those who carry within them a heightened sensitivity. Those whom we now call empaths. I have long observed that certain individuals, almost against their will, appear to attract chaos again and again. They may seek peace, yet they find conflict. They long for stability, yet instability seems to pursue them. They yearn for love, yet they find themselves entwined in relationships that drain their very essence. This paradox is not a surface phenomenon. It arises from the depths of the psyche, from what I have called the shadow, from archetypes that stir in the collective unconscious, from wounds left unacknowledged. The empath, by definition, stands open to the emotional currents of others. He or she receives impressions as though the boundary between self and other were made of porous skin, through which the joys and sorrows of humanity seep without resistance. This openness is a gift, but every gift carries its danger, and the danger here is precisely that chaos rushes in when the vessel is not strong enough, when the ego has not yet differentiated itself sufficiently. The influx of foreign emotions threatens to dissolve identity. To avoid this dissolution, the psyche often attracts precisely those circumstances which dramatize the conflict, as though outer chaos mirrors the inner confusion. I have spoken before of projection. What is not integrated in oneself is seen outside. The empath, because of his heightened sensitivity, projects with greater force. The unacknowledged shadow within is met in the chaotic figure without. A woman who has not faced the aggressive impulses in herself may repeatedly find herself with violent partners. A man who disowns his own wounded child may continually meet others who cry out with need and manipulation. In this way, the empath does not merely stumble upon chaos. He or she summons it unconsciously to enact the unfinished drama of the soul. But let me tell you a dream. A patient once came to me, a woman with delicate features and trembling hands. She said, "I dreamt of walking into a cathedral. The light was dim, the incense heavy. At the altar, a black horse reared and screamed, scattering candles. People ran, but I stood frozen, unable to move. Then the horse turned to me, its eyes glowing with fire, and I awoke. The dream terrified her. Yet it was a revelation, for the horse was her own instinctual power. Repressed and disowned, she had sought peace all her life, harmony at any cost. Yet within her dwelt the raging horse, the force of instinct. Because she had refused to acknowledge this within, she continually found herself entangled with men of violent temper, men whose rage expressed what she could not admit was hers. The empath who attracts chaos is often in the same position. Sensitive souls wish to be good, to soothe, to heal, to harmonize, but in disowning their darker instincts, the rage, the aggression, the desire for power, they invite those very forces to appear externally. Life insists on wholeness. That which is repressed in the unconscious must return. often in distorted or destructive forms. So chaos becomes the emissary of the soul, forcing the empath to confront what they would rather deny. And here, my friends, we must speak of archetypes, for this drama is not merely personal, it is universal. In myths we find the wounded healer, the one who can only heal others through the wound he himself carries. We find also the trickster who shatters order with chaos, who laughs at the structures of the ego. Many empaths are unconsciously identified with the archetype of the healer. They seek to save, to mend, to bear the suffering of others. Yet every healer attracts the trickster, for healing without shadow becomes hubris. The trickster enters to break illusions, to scatter the over-identification with goodness, to bring in the dark medicine. Consider Christ on the cross, the healer nailed to wood, surrounded by chaos, betrayal, abandonment. Or think of Dionysus, the god of ecstasy and madness, who brings both liberation and destruction. The empath who attracts chaos is reliving these archetypal dramas. He or she becomes the vessel through which the collective, unconscious, plays itself out until the individual awakens to the meaning. Without this awakening, the cycle repeats endlessly. Why again and again? Because the unconscious does not tire. It repeats until it is made conscious. One might compare it to the revolving of planets, the endless cycles of the heavens. Saturn returns, demanding responsibility. Pluto descends, demanding transformation. In the psyche, the shadow returns again and again until it is faced. The empath attracts chaos, not once, but repeatedly, because chaos is the form the shadow takes when it is not embraced. Each repetition is an invitation to a greater consciousness, a more whole self, and here lies the path for the empath. The task is not to close the heart, not to retreat from sensitivity, but to strengthen the vessel. One must learn to differentiate self from other, to recognize this sorrow belongs to me, that despair belongs to another. One must integrate the shadow, acknowledge the rage, the instinct, the desire for control. When these are embraced within, the external world no longer needs to dramatize them so violently. Then chaos ceases to pursue, for its message has been heard, but the way is difficult. Many of you sitting before me may feel that very pull even now. You know, the exhaustion of carrying emotions not your own. You know, the disorientation of being pulled into other storms. You may ask, why me? Why always me? And I tell you, because your soul chose this path of sensitivity, because the archetype of the wounded healer lives in you, because life itself desires to make you whole. I recall another dream, a man, quiet and shy, who could not bear conflict, dreamt that he was in a forest at night. Wolves howled around him. He climbed a tree to escape. Yet, as he looked down, he saw that the wolves were not attacking, they were circling, watching, waiting. In analysis, we saw that the wolves were his own instincts, his own aggression, which he feared. By climbing the tree, he had elevated himself into the spiritual realm, denying his animal nature, but the wolves would not leave, for they sought acknowledgement. Only when he climbed down and stood on the earth could he make peace with them. This is what the empaths must do. Descend from the tree of false harmony, return to the earth of instinct, face the wolves. Chaos comes again and again because the wolves are still circling until one faces them. There can be no peace. And yet, my friends, this descent is not without grace. In the very act of confronting the chaos, of admitting one's own darkness, there is liberation. The empath who integrates shadow becomes not a victim of chaos, but a master of transformation. He can stand in the storm without being shattered. She can feel the grief of the world without drowning. Then the gift of empathy shines in its fullness, not as weakness, but as strength. I must caution, however, the path is not to be rushed. Integration of the shadow is not the work of a day, but of a lifetime. Dreams, active imagination, analysis, all these are tools by which the unconscious speaks. Pay attention to the images that arise in sleep, to the fantasies that trouble the waking mind. They are guides pointing to what is missing, to what has been disowned. The black horse, the circling wolves, the trickster, all these are messages. Listen to them, not with fear, but with reverence. And so I say, if you are an empath who attracts chaos again and again, do not despair. The chaos is your teacher. It comes to shatter illusions, to force you into wholeness. Each painful relationship, each storm of emotion, each betrayal is the voice of the unconscious calling you home to yourself. To resist is to suffer endlessly. To accept is to begin the journey of individuation, the journey toward the self, that divine center which holds all opposites in unity. And now, let us descend even deeper into this mystery, for what we have spoken of so far is but the outer ring of the labyrinth. You may already feel that what I am describing is not a mere idea, but a reflection of your own life. Some of you know all too well the repetition of disorder, the uncanny sense that you are drawn magnetically to situations that end in turmoil. The world tells you that you are unlucky, or that you must simply choose better companions, but such superficial advice misses the point entirely. What is repeated with such precision cannot be dismissed as coincidence. It is the language of the unconscious shaping outer destiny with inner necessity. The empath stands at a threshold where two worlds meet. In one world lies the rational, conscious personality, the persona that seeks order, virtue, peace. In the other lies the archaic, instinctual, mythic forces of the collective unconscious. To be sensitive is to have thinner walls between these worlds. That which for others remains buried bursts into the empath's life with violence. Thus, the repetition of chaos is a sign that the gods of the unconscious are near, demanding recognition. To ignore them is to suffer. To obey blindly is to be destroyed. But to enter into dialogue is to be transformed. Let me speak of symbols, for they are the language of this deeper world. Shaush, when it appears, is rarely random. It comes with images, with patterns, with figures that bear meaning. The partner who deceives is not only a person, but also an image of the trickster archetype. The friend who erupts in uncontrollable anger is not only an individual, but also the eruption of the war god. the mass within. The repeated betrayal is not only bad fortune, it is the drama of the wounded inner child, reenacted until it is healed. If you wish to break the cycle, you must learn to read these symbols. I remember a young man who came to me. Wherever he went, disaster followed, friendships collapsed, careers dissolved, lovers betrayed him. He said, I must be cursed. But in his dreams, the same figure appeared, a wild man in rags, laughing, setting fire to buildings. He tried to flee, but the figure followed. Slowly we understood this was his own repressed vitality, his unlived passion, which he had confined in chains of politeness. Because he denied it inwardly, it erupted outwardly as chaos. Only when he learned to welcome the wild man as part of himself did the disaster cease. The energy that once destroyed became creative power. You see, the empath's openness means that repression is doubly dangerous. What is not lived inwardly is not simply buried, it spills into the environment. Sensitive individuals live at such a psychic pitch that the world itself seems to participate in their unconscious. If you wonder why you attract chaos again and again, ask yourself, what part of me am I refusing to live? What inner figure have I cast into the shadow? That figure will not remain silent. It will call to you through the voices of others. It will storm into your life as outer disorder until you acknowledge it as your own. This is why the process of individuation is not optional. For some, the unconscious can be ignored, and they live their lives with little awareness of the deeper currents. But for empaths, for those attuned to the subtle vibrations of the psyche, avoidance is impossible. Life itself will conspire to confront you with the shadow, with the unlived, with the chaotic. You cannot escape by running to a new city or by finding a new companion, for the pattern follows wherever you go. The only path is inward, into the cave of self, into dialogue with the unconscious, and yet this descent is terrifying. Many resist, for they fear that to acknowledge their darkness will destroy their goodness. They fear that to admit anger will make them violent, that to own desire will corrupt their purity, that to face selfishness will annihilate their compassion. But the opposite is true. To repress these forces is to be possessed by them unconsciously, to be at their mercy without awareness. To integrate them is to become whole, to stand firmly in oneself, to use instinct as servant rather than master. Imagine a river. If you block its flow, it floods the fields and destroys homes. But if you channel it, it irrigates the land and brings life. So it is with instinct, with aggression, with chaos. The empath who learns to direct the river of inner energy no longer drowns in it, but thrives by its power. Now, let us turn to the image of chaos itself. What is chaos? Myth tells us it is the primal state before creation, the swirling void from which cosmos emerges in every life. Chaos precedes transformation. The empath who meets chaos again and again is, though they know it, not standing at the threshold of creation. The repeated disorder is the soul's demand for a new order, one not imposed from without, but born from within. Without chaos, there is no rebirth. Without dissolution, no new form can arise. Therefore, I urge you not to see the chaos that repeats in your life as punishment, but as initiation. You are being initiated into the mysteries of transformation, into the ancient rhythm of death and rebirth, just as the alchemists knew that the prima materia must first decay into blackness before the gold can be extracted. So must your old patterns collapse before your true self can shine forth. The empath is chosen for this path precisely because of sensitivity, because you are able to perceive what others deny, because you are called to embody a deeper truth. Do not think, however, that the unconscious is cruel. It is relentless, yes, but its purpose is wholeness. Each repetition of chaos is like the hammer striking the stone, breaking it open so that the hidden jewel within can be seen. If you find yourself yet again in turmoil, ask not, why am I cursed? But rather, what is seeking to be born in me? The answer may not come at once, but if you listen through dreams, through intuition, through the language of symbol, it will reveal itself. And here I must speak of love, for empaths are often ensnared most deeply in relationships. You love intensely, you feel the other's soul, you give without reserve, yet it is precisely here that chaos enters most violently. You may attract those who are broken, manipulative, chaotic, because some part of you has not yet faced your own brokenness, your own capacity for manipulation, your own chaos. Love becomes a mirror in which you meet the shadow. This is why relationships repeat with such painful similarity. Each partner is another mask worn by the same inner figure. Until you claim that figure, you will meet it again and again in different guises. But there is hope. When you begin to recognize the pattern, when you stop blaming fate and instead turn inward, everything changes. The moment you see the shadow for what it is, the outer repetition loses its grip. You may still meet chaos, but it no longer controls you. You stand in it. You see through it. You use it as fuel for growth. Then you are no longer merely an empath who suffers. You are an individual who creates. Do not underestimate the power of this shift. To move from unconscious victimhood to conscious participation is to move from being acted upon by archetypes to embodying them creatively. You become not the prey of chaos, but the bearer of transformation. You may even become, for others, a guide through the storm, for you have walked the labyrinth and know its turns. And so I say again, the repetition of chaos is not meaningless. It is the call of the self, the demand for wholeness, the alchemical fire that burns away illusion. The empath is not cursed, but chosen to walk the path of integration, chosen to carry light into shadow, chosen to transform suffering into wisdom. And so, let us continue, for the labyrinth winds further still, and each turn reveals yet another chamber of the soul. I have said that the empath is chosen, that chaos is initiation, that the unconscious repeats its patterns until one awakens, but perhaps the most bewildering question remains, why does it hurt so much? Why does the soul choose a path of suffering when it could have chosen ease? Here we must move beyond psychology into the realm of mystery, where myth and symbol breathe with life, pain, my friends, is the great awakener. Without it, a few would ever leave the comfort of illusion. Chaos tears the veil. It dismantles the false structures of the ego, which would otherwise settle into complacency. The empath suffers more deeply precisely because the empath is capable of transformation more profoundly, just as the seed must split to allow the shoot to emerge. So the empath's heart must break open again and again until it can contain the immensity of the self. But I caution you, do not romanticize this suffering. To suffer needlessly, without awareness, is to be consumed by it. The task is not to worship chaos, but to learn from it, to transmute it, to allow it to become the crucible of transformation. The alchemist spoke of the nigredo, the blackening, when all matter decays into darkness. This stage was necessary before the whitening and the reddening, before the gold could be revealed. So too in the psyche. The empath passes through repeated nights of chaos, not to perish, but to emerge with greater wholeness. And now, let us speak of the self, for it is here that the deepest meaning is found. The self is not the ego, not the conscious personality with its preferences and fears. The self is the totality of the psyche, conscious and unconscious, shadow and light, mortal and divine. It is the inner image of God, the imago Dei, the archetype of wholeness. When chaos repeats, it is the self knocking on the door of the ego, saying, "You have mistaken yourself for too little. You have forgotten that you are more than harmony, more than goodness, more than sensitivity. You are vast. You are a microcosm of the cosmos. And until you embrace all of it, you cannot know who you truly are." Here lies the paradox. The empath identifies with light, with compassion, with gentleness. Yet the self demands the integration of opposites. The self contains wrath as well as mercy, destruction as well as creation, darkness as well as radiance. To become whole, one must embrace the opposites, not by choosing one over the other, but by holding them in tension until a new synthesis emerges. This is the path of individuation, and it is never easy. Do you recall the myth of Inanna, the Sumerian goddess who descended into the underworld? She was stripped of her jewels, her robes, her crown, until she stood naked before her shadow sister Ereshkigal. Only through this descent, this confrontation with darkness, could she return, transformed, bearing wisdom. The empath too must descend, must be stripped of illusions, must meet the shadow self in the depths. Each repetition of chaos is another descent, another stripping, another confrontation with Ereshkigal, and each return carries new strength, new awareness, new integration. But the danger is real. Some become trapped in the underworld, some identify with chaos itself and never rise again. Some collapse into bitterness, saying, "The world is cruel, I am cursed." This is why consciousness is essential. Without it, one is devoured. With it, one emerges transformed. The difference lies not in the external events, but in the inner attitude, in the willingness to see meaning where others see only randomness. I must remind you, too, of the anima and animus, those inner contrasexual figures that shape our relationships. For many empaths, chaos appears most fiercely in love because the anima or animus is projected outward. The man sees in the woman his soul image. The woman sees in the man her inner spirit. These projections are powerful, enchanting, intoxicating, but they are also dangerous. For when the projection falls upon a chaotic partner, one is bound to them with chains forged by the unconscious itself. To withdraw these projections, to recognize the inner figure for what it is a task of immense courage. Only then can one love the other as they are, not as a vessel for one's own soul. I remember a woman who loved passionately, but always found herself with men who betrayed her. She said, "I see such beauty in them, such potential, even when they harm me." In dreams, she saw a radiant youth with golden hair, beckoning her into gardens of delight. Slowly she realized this radiant youth was her animus, her inner spirit, which she had cast upon these men. They could not embody it. And so chaos ensued. Only when she reclaimed the animus as her own did she cease to be ensnared by betrayal. Then she could love freely without illusion. The empath who attracts chaos must examine carefully the projections of anima and animus. For often what is most divine in us, we first meet in others and only later learn to claim within. Until that claiming chaos repeats, relationships shatter, hearts break. But once the projection is withdrawn, love becomes clearer, freer, more genuine. And what of dreams? Dreams are the royal road to the unconscious, the nightly theater where chaos and meaning mingle. If you suffer repeated turmoil, look to your dreams. They will show you the hidden pattern. They will personify the shadow, dramatize the conflict, reveal the archetypes at work. Pay attention to the images. No matter how strange, the snake that bites you, the house that crumbles, the sea that floods all, are messages from the depths. Do not dismiss them as nonsense. They are the script by which the unconscious teaches. A man once told me of a dream where he was in a city on fire. He ran, terrified, yet felt exhilarated. "What does it mean?" he asked. We discovered that the fire was his own repressed passion, his creative energy, which, denied expression, burned destructively in his outer life. When he began to paint, to write, to live with greater vitality, the dreams of fire ceased, and the chaos in his life diminished. The dream had been urging him toward expression, toward integration of the fiery instinct. Thus, dreams are guides. To ignore them is to remain trapped in endless repetition. To heed them is to find the path through chaos. And let us not forget the collective aspect. Many empaths suffer not only their own turmoil, but also that of the world. Sensitive souls pick up the vibrations of the collective unconscious, the unrest of the age, the suffering of humanity. Chaos in the outer world resonates with chaos within. Wars, revolutions, societal breakdowns. These too are archetypal events, expressions of the collective shadow. To be an empath today is to stand in the storm of collective transformation. Do not take it all as personal, but neither dismiss it. Recognize that you are part of a larger pattern, that your suffering participates in the suffering of humanity, and that your transformation contributes to the healing of the collective. So, when chaos comes again, pause, ask, is this mine, or is this the world's? Is this my shadow, or is this the collective shadow passing through me? The distinction is subtle but essential. One cannot carry all the world's pain. You must discern. You must set boundaries. You must care for your own soul, or you will be drowned. Remember, to heal others, you must first become whole yourself. The path, then, is not escape, but integration. Not denial, but acceptance. Not victimhood, but conscious participation. The empath who learns this path will still meet chaos, but no longer as a curse. It will come as a teacher, a guide, a necessary stage in the great work of individuation. And in time, you will see that the very thing that once seemed to destroy you has become your strength. The storms that once broke you now reveal your resilience. The betrayals that shattered your heart now deepen your compassion. The cycles of chaos that seemed endless now appear as the rhythm of transformation. You have not been cursed. You have been forged. And now, as we approach the end of this reflection, let us weave together the threads. You who feel the weight of chaos, who wonder why life seems to strike you again and again, know that you are not alone. You are walking a path carved into the very fabric of myth. Empaths across centuries, mystics, visionaries, shamans, prophets, all have been pursued by chaos, tested by betrayal, pierced by suffering. What you carry is archetypal. Your pain belongs not only to you, but to humanity itself. Yet, we must not leave this matter in abstraction. I wish to speak to you directly, as though you sat before me in a dimly lit hall, the air heavy with silence, waiting for a word that might pierce your heart. Listen carefully. Chaos is not your enemy. Chaos is the midwife of your transformation. It is a forge in which your soul is tempered. You are not cursed. You are being prepared. But for what? For wholeness. For the task of embodying both the light and the shadow, both the human and the divine, both a wound and a gift. I know that you wish for rest. I know that you long for peace. And peace will come, but not the fragile peace of avoidance. True peace arises only when you are no longer afraid of the storm, when you can walk into chaos with steady heart, when you can say, I have met the wolves within me, I have tamed the black horse, I have danced with the trickster, I have embraced my shadow, then chaos no longer terrifies, for it has lost its power to surprise. You have become larger than the storm. The process is not linear. There will be times when you think you have integrated the shadow, only to find it rise again in a new disguise. There will be moments of despair when you think, I have learned nothing, I am still trapped. But these regressions are part of the path. The spiral descends and ascends. Each cycle takes you deeper. Each return brings new light. Do not judge yourself too harshly when chaos reappears. Ask instead, what new layer is being revealed? For individuation is not a destination, but a journey, a continual unfolding of the self. And let me tell you, the very sensitivity that once felt like a curse will become your greatest gift. Once integrated, Empathy is no longer fragility, it is strength. You will be able to stand in the presence of suffering without drowning. You will be able to accompany others through their chaos without losing yourself. You will become a vessel of transformation, not because you have avoided the storm, but because you have survived it. This is the paradox. Your wound becomes your medicine. Your chaos becomes your wisdom. Your sensitivity becomes your power. Do not imagine, however, that the world will applaud. Often those who embody wholeness are misunderstood. People may still call you too sensitive, too intense, too different, but within you will be a quiet authority, the authority of one who has faced themselves. No external judgment can take that away. This is the mark of individuation, to live not according to the expectations of the world, but according to the inner law of the self. And what of love, which so many empaths crave, and yet which so often brings pain? I say to you, when you have withdrawn your projections, when you have claimed your inner figures, then love becomes possible in a new way. No longer do you seek salvation in another. No longer do you demand that the partner carry the burden of your soul. You meet as two whole beings, each carrying shadow and light, each free to give and to receive. This love is not the intoxication of projection, but the sober, radiant flame of true encounter. Chaos mai stillarise, but it no longer destroys. For the foundation is strong. In the end, the question is not, why do I attract chaos? The question is, what is chaos asking of me? If you can answer this, if you can listen to the voice hidden in the storm, then repetition becomes revelation. The same pattern that once tormented you becomes the path to wholeness. The labyrinth that once seemed endless reveals its center, and in that center you find not only yourself but the divine mystery that dwells in all. Let us recall once more the image of the alchemist. He stirs the vessel, he watches the matter dissolve, blacken, whiten, redden, until at last the gold appears. The empath's life is the alchemical vessel. The chaos that repeats is the fire that heats the work. The shadow that returns is the prima materia. And the gold, my friends, is the self-whole, radiant, unshackable. So do not flee the work. Do not despair when chaos comes again. Greet it as the alchemist greets the fire, with reverence, with patience, with knowledge that transformation is at hand. Each repetition is another turn of the wheel, another step in the opus. And though the work may take a lifetime, though the gold may seem always just beyond reach, know that every moment of consciousness, every act of integration, every dream attended to brings you closer to the fullness of who you are. I speak these words not to give you easy comfort, but to awaken in you the courage to walk this path consciously. The empath who suffers without understanding is at the mercy of chaos. The empath who sees meaning in suffering becomes an initiate of the mysteries. Which will you be? The choice, though difficult, is yours. As I close, let me offer you an image. Imagine yourself standing in the midst of a storm. Lightning flashes, thunder roars, winds howl. Once you would have been swept away, terrified, crying for it to end. But now you stand still. You feel the storm in your body, but you are not destroyed. You know that the storm is not outside you, but also within you. And you are large enough to hold it. Slowly, the winds calm, the rain subsides, the clouds part, and you realize the storm has not left you, it has become you. You are both chaos and cosmos, both wound and healer, both human and divine. This is individuation. This is wholeness. So I leave you with this. Embrace the repetition, for it is your teacher. Welcome the chaos, for it is your initiation. Trust the path, for it leads not to destruction but to transformation. And remember always, you are not cursed. You are called